Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is the go-to hub of sexual health communications resources, specifically for people navigating herpes stigma. As you know, in 2017, this podcast itself started as a suicide prevention awareness resource for people living with herpes, just because there were so many people at the time in the support groups and on the dating sites that I found who were openly expressing suicide ideation after their diagnosis. Over the years, as you know, we have consistently said here that sexual health is mental health, meaning that one's sexuality is so interconnected with their identity that the diagnosis of something like herpes impacting their sexuality does not exclusively affect that, but it affects the whole person. And so what this podcast is it just offers some sort of therapeutic listening, almost like you're sitting in on a support group or conversation of people just talking about living with this virus in a way that you may not have ever heard before or considered as a possibility for yourself. So that's essentially what the podcast is. As a nonprofit, I advocate for the integration of people's lived experiences and communication skills that they've developed to be integrated into sex education resources, because a lot of these communication skills have nothing to do with sex. When we think sex education, we think intercourse education. But again, like we're learning here, sexuality and identity, these are not mutually exclusive, and I hope I use mutually exclusive correct. So yeah, if I didn't, what I mean by that is your identity is not exclusively your sexuality, and that, or your ability to perform intercourse, I guess. When we talk about sex and sexuality, we're talking about the more broad terms of that. We're talking about a person's overall well-being in relation to how they connect with people intimately. And a lot of this does include things like consent, boundaries, honoring healthy relationship and relationship acts, I guess I would say. Being able to seek out support in the event that there are consent violations, as well as being accountable, self-accountable, as well as accountable for the people in your circle, in your network, in your community. Couple quick announcements before we get the podcast started. If you have not already taken the 2023 HSV survey, please go to Something Positive for Positive People's website, SPFPP.org. Click on the survey tab and you will be able to fill that in. We are collecting this information, which will help me with creating these presentations, going to these spaces, and offering additional perspective on what it means for people to navigate herpes stigma. Organizations right now are really looking at herpes and trying to understand the community, probably because some big pharmaceutical company recognized that there's a potentiality of increasing Valtrex sales, and they want to like throw money at the community, get some information, and decide the best way to go about that. So help me get some of that money by sharing y'all surveys and information. But ultimately, the intention behind that, obviously they want to make more money, and obviously I'm trying to get people to not buy into their methods of making more money. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. But if you want to solve any problem, you kind of have to be a part of it in a way in order to understand it and be able to dismantle it from the inside. So this is a hostile takeover for the pharmaceutical companies. Hopefully nobody at the organization hears that, but y'all hear it, y'all know me, y'all know what I mean. And yeah, unless they like put me on payroll or something, y'all go hear the production of this podcast change. I'm gonna start talking about shit that ain't got nothing to do with herpes. Y'all gonna be like, man, Courtney done changed up on us. You damn right. No, I'm just playing. I wouldn't do that. But no, seriously, please take the survey if you get the chance to. This podcast, I mean, I don't know how I've been doing this for as long as I have, to be completely honest. Donations don't be coming in like y'all might think they do. Like as of recent, grants have become available. I want to shout out to the Love and Action Fund for giving Something Positive for Positive People $50,000. That was amazing. We've been able to just kind of keep things as they are without me having to stress about not being able to do things that I need to do for myself, which The consistency is my metric for success for something positive. So we're going into our 7th year as a podcast, and it'll have been 5 years as a nonprofit in 2024. And save this date, May 23rd, 2024. This is going to be the first ever virtual Something Positive for Positive People conference, where I will present the survey findings from what y'all are sending in, as well as offer some disclosure resources and tools for people to, if you're in the healthcare field, give to your patients or clients. I will be selling tickets at some point. I'm probably going to do like early ticket sales. I don't know how much these are going to be. I got to look at the cost of the software and managing that, and I got to pay people to help me with it, and I also got to pay other presenters to present things that I found to be useful to me as I was navigating stigma, and I want to pass that on to you. So there will be something for people living with herpes, partners of people who are living with herpes, as well as public health professionals, therapists, and anyone who might be even a nurse. You know, if you're someone who diagnoses someone with herpes. I am going to also pursue being able to get people continuing education credits. I don't know what that process is. I have a meeting coming up with one of my board members that we will have had by the time this podcast episode releases. So hopefully I'll have an update soon. But mark your calendar, May 23rd, 2024, 5-year anniversary of Something Positive for Positive People as a nonprofit. I looked at the form I got from the IRS. That was its birthday, like when it got the birth certificate. So I think that's like the best way to word it. All right. These are my announcements, as well as get on Patreon, join the support group. I'm driving people into the support groups that are on Mondays at 1 or on every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. As of now, this will change in the future, I'm sure. But if you visit the website and you go to the events tab, you'll be able to keep up with when these events are. All right, these are all of my announcements. Those are the 3 main things I got going on: survey, conference, support groups. My guest today is not Wednesday, but Tuesday. All right. And Tuesday, I am going to, because I've already talked so much and I'm sure people are tired of hearing my voice, balance it out by letting you introduce yourself. However you want to be introduced. And you've done podcasting before, so
yeah,
you got this. I trust you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Really wanted to interject with a joke about how you were going to start selling Casper mattresses, but I didn't.
They got to pay for that. Even if it's a joke, they got to pay for it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tuesday. And
just switch your voice up like that?
That's my podcasting voice. See, I'm 36 years old, and I have had herpes, a herpes diagnosis. I've had herpes for over 10 years, as far as I know. So I'm going to go through the story of how I learned that, and then I'm going to go through the story about how you helped me inadvertently. You didn't know at the time. So when I was younger, I was living in Seattle, and very sexually active.
What is very sexually active?
Okay, so I lost my virginity when I was 21. I was a late bloomer. And
y'all some freaks. I got an ex who lost her virginity at like 21, and
yeah, no, I'm making up for lost time, right?
Yes, she did.
So, I would say very sexually active is like 2 to 3 partners, like at one time, like seeing multiple people at the same time.
Like in the same sitting? We gotta be more specific.
No,
all right.
Separate times.
Got it.
Right? I would like to say that my dance card was full, right? And so I did the responsible thing, and I got an STI test, and I went to my naturopath to do it. And she did a blood draw for the herpes test. And what was I, like 23, 22, 23? So things came back positive. HPV came back positive, and herpes, HSV1. HSV1? Genital herpes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So 1 or 2 can be genital.
Uh-huh.
It's most common that type 2 is genital, but what we're seeing lately is that HSV1 genitally is on the rise.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
More people who grow up getting cold sores are actively eating and licking genitals and passing it on that way.
okay. So I came back positive for HSV2. And at the time, I had a great naturopath, and I felt devastated, right? Like internalized, my sex life is over, I'm dirty I remember the prominent feeling. And my naturopath at the time, like, called me a week later just to, like, check in on me with the diagnosis. She was like, are you okay? Are you going to be okay? And for that week, I had been, like, terribly depressed. And I was like, just having her check in on me, honestly, got me a step out of that depression. So years go by, right? I get regularly tested.
What's regularly tested?
Like twice a year, because there is a period of time where I'm not sleeping with a lot of people. I have singular partners. We get tested regularly. We use protection.
What do you mean protection?
Condom.
Thank you. Because
Yes.
when people say that word to me, I go, because I do these like scenarios with med students, and when they go through the sexual history and they go, are you using protection during sex? And I go, do you mean, do I carry my gun on me while I have sex? So when we talk about protection, I like to just interject a little bit and let's use like barriers or condoms or dental dams, which I'm finding that nobody likes to use.
I can't tell you. I don't think I've ever seen a dental dam in my life.
If you would like, you can take one and you can use it. I have some here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can try it out, see how you like it. But the times that I've used it, I had one partner be like, you want me to put a condom on your dick? I was like, no. I was like, all right, I'll get rid of it. And then there is a partner that I've had who only uses condoms for oral. Super respected.
Yeah.
So anytime I want to go down on her, I have dental dams. And I want to thank she no longer has an account, but Positive Results, Ray had made dental dams a thing to me. So she sent me some and I had them. They might even have been expired. That's how long they just been chilling. Yeah. But they worked for that situation, just being with someone who likes to use condoms for everything.
Yes. Yeah. So is it calling out the actual like product, like what it is, instead of using the word protection? Is it saying condom, dental dam?
You can just say barrier. Yeah, because when we use protection, it implies that there's a threat or that there's harm.
Yeah.
Right? Herpes isn't something that is threatening. Yeah. It's not something that's harmful. You as a person aren't harmful or threatening because you have herpes, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, years go by. Getting regularly tested. And I did not clock that no one was testing me for herpes because it's a blood draw, right? When I got my future HPV tests and it cleared up, in my head, I conflated it and I decided that herpes diagnosis was a false positive. Because I was like, oh, well, it cleared up. Like, I don't know how this happened in my head, but that was the story that I came up with, right? So it's like a decade after that. And my now husband.
Congratulations, because this is recent.
It's recent. Thank you. He asked me, he was like, hey, do you mind getting like a herpes test again? And I was like, yeah, of course,
How long ago was this?
This was over a year ago.
Okay.
So this was not this past April, but the April before.
2022.
So I went and got my blood drawn and I did the entire panel, gonorrhea, chlamydia, everything. And HSV2 came back positive. And I was shocked all over again. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've been irresponsible. I feel like I've been of harm because I wasn't disclosing, because I really just didn't know. Because I think, looking into it, like, no nurse or Planned Parenthood person asked me about the herpes test. And, like, it had been so long since I had actively asked for it. So that sent me into a whole new depression, right? So it was like, oh my God, I have herpes. And I feel like I've been lying to people, And so in that time, when I found out, I had to disclose to, obviously, my now husband and our partners, because we are polyamorous.
Our partners, shared partners, or partners separately?
Shared partners and separate partners.
Okay.
So there were only a couple of folks that we saw together, and then there are a couple of folks that I was seeing by myself. And then there were people that he was just seeing by himself, and so we disclosed to the entire network of people.
Without interrupting your story,
yes,
can I ask how that went for you?
Disclosing?
To so many people and, like, having to secondarily disclose.
Uh-huh.
So he hadn't tested positive, right?
Mm-mm.
But he needed to tell his other partners that, hey, my wife has HSV2.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to hear about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to know if you think that there would have been a difference in response between you sharing HSV2 or HSV1.
Okay. So how it was to disclose and secondarily disclose.
Yes.
Okay. When I had to do it to my partners, I was scared, obviously, I think we all fear rejection.
What kind of relationships were these? Were these
good question.
Long-term? Were these hookups?
These were,
Were you in relationships with these people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody we disclosed to were people that we did not just, like, randomly hook up with and never texted again. These are people that we regularly see, or at the time we were seeing. I would say for almost over a year. Like, good solid people that were a part of our network. So I disclosed to, like, my partner outside of my marriage, and I was scared to do it. And
how long did it take you?
Maybe half an hour. Like, I did it, like, really, because I just needed to rip that Band-Aid off, okay. Right? Like, I think I maybe took a walk and then was just like, all right, I just need to do this.
Text message?
Signal message.
Okay.
But yes, text. And he was incredibly supportive.
You really drew out that moment of silence where I thought you were about to say something different than you were supportive.
No. I was very honest with him. Where I was like, I really didn't know that I had this. I've never had an outbreak, as far as I know. I don't remember an outbreak in my early 20s or anywhere in my 20s. I don't remember getting very sick and having, like, flu-like symptoms. And my husband and I have been having unprotected sex for 6 years, and he is not tested positive.
Unbarriered
Sorry,
sex.
Unbarriered. That's going to take a while for me, but I appreciate it.
It's all right. We're learning here.
Yes. All right.
I'd get shit later if I didn't say something now.
Well, you have to say that. I mean, I appreciate it. So, unbarriered sex for 6 years, and he has not tested positive for it.
And I want to plug a statistic here. So if you look at something positive for positive people and you go to the data tab, there's a survey that I ask people, has a partner consented to unbarriered sex with you since your diagnosis? 70-something% of people said yes. Another question that was a follow-up is, have you passed herpes on to a partner as far as you know? And 70-something% of people said no. And that, to me, for you to have had sex with this partner without barriers for 6 years, and to have not had him show symptoms or test positive, that is information I am much more interested in than how do we reduce the transmission rates. Are you on antivirals daily?
No.
And that's what I like try and emphasize. This is where pharmaceutical sales go down, or they decide not to give me money, because I tell people even taking the medication can be a stressor, right? Even if you take it daily to alleviate the anxiety of a partner, bringing the risk down from 6% to 3%, like what does that really mean?
Right.
To lower the percentage and not eliminate the percentage. You want to decrease your likelihood of shedding the virus, and you want to keep your immune system up between you and your partner to minimize the possibility of this passing it on to said partner. So for you not wearing barriers, not using antivirals and sharing that, I very much appreciate it, because I think that is the kind of experience that people need to hear sort of elaborated on, so that they can understand that one time having sex with someone who doesn't have herpes is not going to be what gives them symptoms or makes them test positive for it. And that's what people are so deathly afraid of. They're like, I never want to do this to somebody. And here you are, 6 years in, you had a diagnosis way long ago. You just found out that it's actually there and positive. And 6 years have gone by where herpes was not relevant, and now it's relevant, and you have the security of the relationship. Flip that. If you were to have told him early on, you probably would have tried to jump on antivirals, worn condoms every time, and the relationship would have been different based on the prioritization that you may have given herpes versus the relationship. And who knows how things would have turned out. So here we are on this path of herpes being irrelevant. You prioritize the relationship until herpes comes up. Here we are. Whereas the other way, if you prioritize herpes, who knows if this person would have even gotten as close to you as he has.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's really interesting. I also want to ask a question about antivirals and like financial barriers. Like I have health insurance, and so I don't know if it's like pharmaceuticals are jacking up the prices of antivirals because they're not selling well, or they are selling well. Is there anything about that?
I don't know anything specifically. It's just I heard in passing. I should know this, but there's a pharmaceutical company, Roche, I guess. I don't.
Yep.
Oh, are these like the bad guys in the video game that's like behind some conspiracy theory type shit? Because like I think about this when I play video games. I'm like, yo, this is very real. Like the storyline to the Spider-Man Miles Morales thing, there was like this tech company that was doing all this good. They were making these robots to like help people, kind of like with RoboCop. Like every movie has like a company that on the surface is doing so much good with their technology, but then you go behind the scenes and you see that they're actually working on something for the military, right?
I think that company was pretty evil from the beginning, considering they, shot up their boardroom. But yes, go on.
Exactly. So we're on the same page about this. But in passing, learning that Roche was responsible for putting out this, putting money out there to organizations to talk about, learn about, and put money into herpes and herpes stigma. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know specifically what they're going to do, but they're getting the information perhaps to see where the opportunities are.
Yeah.
Because my solution to herpes stigma is get one test that says positive or negative and have people be tested for it annually unless they already know whether or not they have it.
Yeah.
So then you have more people who are aware of what their status is, and I think that this minimizes the threshold of intolerance, because the older you get without getting herpes or even having a conversation with somebody about herpes or knowing someone with herpes, the more devastating it is going to be, because it's like, how is it that all this time I've never interacted with someone like this, and now all of a sudden it's happening? Because I'm seeing with the younger people when they're exposed, I don't know if it's like the accessibility of information that's out there. And the fact that we have social media where people can find people who might look like them, who are living a normal life with herpes, and they can deep dive and just binge consume information that is going to be helpful to them.
Yeah.
But combining all of these factors, I think there is something to be said for our younger people who are finding themselves having conversations or exposed to herpes or having their own experience with it, compared to someone who much later in life is like, how could this have happened? Now my sex life is over. My sex life never looked the way that it's now going to have to look moving forward. So a consistent test that says yes or no to having herpes, that solves the issue. But with pharmaceutical companies, I can see, them coming out with a medication that says, oh, less than 1% chance of passing it on.
Yes.
But then we still get all of these side effects that are on the table. And I don't know. I don't know what their plan is.
Yeah.
But
it's not for us to know.
I'm stopping it.
I'm pretty sure it's probably nefarious.
It's never really good for us.
No.
Maybe something that like makes it easier to shed and actually pass on to somebody, so more people get it. And more
I want to get conspiratorial.
Right.
I do think, like, as far as young people and their exposure to information and their ability to binge and consume it, I think about, like, when I was first diagnosed and I was like 22, 23, right? The world was different then. And, accessibility of information was different. And just the fact that I had my naturopath call me, like, I look back on that with such gratitude, because hasn't happened since. I've never had a naturopath, like, or a doctor follow up and just check in to see how I was doing. But I'm sure that she was educated in or at least aware of stigma being a precursor to suicidal ideation, or a diagnosis being precursor to suicidal ideation. So I don't know. I think about young people today, and yes, their ability to consume information and get information and, like, see people who look like them and probably feel a little bit more, like, checked in on and comfortable, or at least not alone. That's part of where you come in.
Thank you. So you mentioned disclosing to the one partner.
Yes.
And did all of your disclosures just go well?
They did.
Amazing. How many, if you're comfortable sharing, giving a numbers range, how many people did you disclose to in this short period of time?
Yeah, sorry, I'm counting. I'm gonna say like 6.
And out of 6 disclosures of people that you've had, what's the newest relationship and longest relationship?
Longest was about, I think, a year. And newest was about 3 months.
Okay.
And the newest was like a metamor of mine, basically.
Okay.
And
metamor being a partner's partner.
A partner's partner, yes. So one of my husband's partners. And 3 of the 6 reached out to me personally. My personal partner, and then 2 metamors.
And these are all people you directly disclosed to?
So 2 of them my husband disclosed to. 1 of them I disclosed to directly. I mean, the reception was so positive, as far as, like, I hear you and you're good. This does not change anything for me. With my partner, I still want to have sex with you. I still, like, he went as far to say, like, I'm still attracted to you. This doesn't, change that for me. And then 3 people sent me resources. So they sent me, like, blogs and Instagrams, and someone, I can't remember who it was, sent me a podcast that you were on. And so then I learned about Something Positive for Positive People. And that was huge for me, because it was just, one, love the name. It's so great.
You know, I've gotten in trouble a few times where people are like, I'm a positive person, like thinking their attitude is positive, and I'm like, you have no idea what this is, do you?
Uh-huh.
She's like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
One lady's like, oh gosh, I'm sorry. No. She's so sweet.
Aww. So I listened to you. I wish I could remember what the episode was. I tried to like.
This podcast will kill you.
I don't think that's it.
Oh, really?
No.
That's like the biggest one that people would find me on.
I know of that one.
Okay.
Been afraid to listen to it. This one was a sex educator who had a podcast. I was gonna look back in my signal, but there's so many.
You don't have to.
Yeah, yeah. No. There was so many.
If it's a sex educator, is this non-monogamy type podcast or just sex educator?
No, sex.
Sex Ed with DB. There's that one.
Mm-hmm.
There's also there's actually a lot more that I've been on than I can think of. Alchemy-ish. It's alchemy. It's wordplay on alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the sex educator podcasts. Sex with Dr. Jess.
Might have been that one.
Jess O'Reilly and Brandon.
It might have been. I'm not sure.
That has to. That's like the most.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that's
that was
most likely to be it. Okay.
Yes. Let's say it's that one because it likely is that one.
Okay.
So I got to listen to that and hear about your work. And this is why when we first met, I was like, you don't know how much you helped me. Like, it really just made me feel seen and heard in a way that, like, I didn't realize the depths that I could dive to with this. I'm already predisposed to anxiety and depression. I'm medicated for depression. And I've worked in various arenas of my life to combat that depression. And this was something that I wasn't expecting. And suicidal ideation has like been a part of my story, not the part of my story. It's more of an escapist of fantasy than a suicidal ideation, but still, there's threads of that. And I was just so grateful for you and your work. And can I talk about how we met?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when we matched on Field, like, I was like, oh my God, I know who he is. And I really want to tell him just how much his work means to me. And
for the record, this was, how long ago was this?
That we matched?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Okay. Because I didn't know if it was the second time.
So the first time, I hadn't been diagnosed yet.
That's how long ago it was.
The second time, because when you came up on the podcast, I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I looked up like something positive for positive people. And I was like, I think I know that guy. Because he told me he had a nonprofit. So it was the second time that I got to like, tell you like.
Oh, so this is even more interesting now because it happened so long ago. Or
what happened?
We matched so long ago that this hadn't happened yet or been a thing. And then the second time coming around was when it was a thing. Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since then, I've had another somewhat metamor, a person in our Polycule also get diagnosed with HSV2. And
from you or no?
Mm-mm.
Oh, and they know this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And they experienced the same thing, right? Like shock and some depression, and like I didn't have any symptoms. I don't understand. I don't know how long I've had this.
Did they come straight to you and talk to you about it because they knew?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was able to share your work with them. And I mean, what a gift, right? To just like point to like, hey, here's this very specific nonprofit that's doing a very specific service. And it's for you. here you go.
Oh, thank you.
So I got to do that.
It's always a good time to hear things like this because I'm always like, maybe I should do more blank because I don't hear this like as consistently as people might think, I know impacts are being made, but it's like on a micro level to the point where nothing's happening enough for something positive to be like what people imagine it is in their heads. Like I use this example of the American Red Cross as a nonprofit. Somebody's house burns down, they get put into a new house, they're like, oh my God, the American Red Cross, I'm telling everybody, American Red Cross did this for me, I lost everything, and now I have it. Ain't nobody saying, yeah, I got herpes, I wanted to kill myself, I came across this podcast and talked to this person, and it helped him. It helped me so much. I'm married now, have a family, everything's great. There are no problems in my life right now. That was so insignificant. Kind of just get ignored. But hearing this and things like it, I mean, for every however many times something like that might happen, the one time I hear things like this, I think it gives me a little bit of a boost of, it's not motivation, because I feel like I can't not do this.
Yeah.
Like I don't need motivation to do what I'm doing. Like this at this point is constant. But it makes me more so see the value of the consistency more so than like making this more of a thing. Like every time I try and do an event or get studio space or like host, like try and do what other podcasts are doing, it doesn't work out. Even I tried to get I tried to rent out a studio space, and it will have been the most recent podcast episode where I talk about this a little bit. But I had a very like well-known podcast guest who just so happened to be in Portland. And so I booked studio space for this time period. I confirmed, I gave them money, and I get there 30 minutes early, no one's there. I call and someone answers the phone and they're like, someone will be there at 5 o'clock. I was like, my time that I booked was at 5 o'clock and I needed it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, and they make you book 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm gonna come in a little early, see the space set up, and then like clock starts. 5:05 rolls around. My podcast guest arrives. 5:10 rolls around, and I'm calling these people every 5 minutes. No one's answering the phone now.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, I'm furious.
Yes.
But I can't be furious in front of my podcast guests. This is like a relationship. How I express myself is going to, determine how they view me. So 5:25 rolls around, and she and I just come back here and do it exactly where we're recording now.
Yeah.
We just came back here and did it. But like, I had plans to do video, and like the lighting in here is terrible, so video is not great. People can watch that podcast interview actually on Patreon, www.spfpp.org/Patreon, if you want to see the live podcast or behind the scenes footage. Actually, the behind the scenes is on Patreon. You can watch the podcast live at spfpp.org/podcast and go to that episode specifically. But yeah, I'll try and do things like that, and some weird off the wall like universe blocks just happen, and then this happens.
Yes.
So I think that just means like this is supposed to be like a cool underground thing that not too many people know about, because that like keeps the quality what it is. I do believe that if I do get too big, like I said earlier, you think I'm playing, like I don't think anyone is immune to changing up when they get a lot of money or when circumstances change significantly. Like if I had to maintain an image, go to a podcast studio, do videos, chop those videos up into shorts and reels and TikTok videos, I would be a different person. So I think that I'm supposed to record podcasts on my phone, and real like janky, like this is the most ghetto ass setup, y'all. I'm telling you, all my podcast interviews, I remember I was using microphones for a while, and for a while people were saying, hey, I can't hear you. I've turned the volume up, and these are expensive ass microphones. But then like I stopped using the microphone. Like, I don't know what you did differently, but this sounds so much clearer now. You sound great. Whatever you're using, keep doing it. And it's my cell phone. Just like propped up on a ring light.
Yes.
Hidden record button.
That makes me regret buying the podcast mics that we did.
I mean, if you gonna listen, get your use out of them.
I know.
Yeah.
But I also think like the homegrown quality of not only the podcast, but the nonprofit, not that the nonprofit is necessarily homegrown because your website is slick.
I spent my own money for that.
It looks good.
Shout out to my designer. Thank you, Jenny. I've been getting a lot of compliments on it, and more people have been using it too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so happy about that.
Oh, it's fantastic. But because of the personal nature of the work that you do, and the vulnerable nature of the work that you do, and how it gets to like the very core of people's identity and feelings about their identity, the homegrown nature of it kind of lends itself to being able to share it with other people, right? Or like feeling welcomed into it. I think that's really like, you're accessible. This podcast is accessible. The website is accessible because the information needs to be accessible. So I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I also, I mean, I've definitely run into situations in my life where I'm trying to make something happen and it feels like I'm, pushing up against the wall and things aren't happening and I get real mad about it and then I let go. And not to get like woo-woo about it.
I do it every week.
Okay. But
you did a thing to your neck and face. You alright?
Huh?
Are you allergic to something? Like you just started turning like real red all right here.
Oh no.
Alright.
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Can we cut that out too? Because now I'm gonna blush and I'm gonna be embarrassed.
Oh my god. No, what? We're not watching it. We can keep that in there.
Okay.
Don't make me remember too many things because there's something to fall through the cracks.
You're right. Okay. So what was I saying? Oh, okay. Not to get too woo-woo. But I was trying to move to Portland for like a year, right? Or like 9 months, right? And nothing was happening and nothing was like working out and things that kept seeming to line up just didn't line up. And I was traveling a little bit and ended up in Colorado for a wedding for my cousin. My aunt was there and she's talking to me and she's like, well, what you're in now is the fertile void. And I was like, excuse me, what does that mean? And she was like, things are happening, but you're not privy to them happening yet. So while you're, moving forward and doing what you're doing, things are happening over here. And then as soon as it's ready, it will be ready and it will come to fruition. So I think that like, I don't know, ever since then, I've just really paid attention to like what doesn't work, right? And trying not to force things. And things have seemed to work out.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that. So how did your partner disclose for you before I move on?
Oh, right. I mean, over text message he texted.
And was it just like, hey, my wife has HSV2.
Yes.
Y'all good?
Yep.
Yeah.
And everyone was thumbs up. Cool.
Yeah. And I often tell people we expect rejection when sharing our status with people. But so much of this is this person attracted to me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if we have a relationship, I'm more attracted to you than I am afraid of getting herpes. Right?
Yes.
And if a person is more afraid of getting herpes than they are being with you, then they're just not that attracted to you. Because otherwise, people with herpes wouldn't be having sex if that were the case where everyone was afraid of getting herpes.
Yes.
So we have to sit with the possibility that just maybe we ain't as attractive as we think we are to said person, right? And that might be a little bit difficult to hear, but it's real. If I have one-on-one conversation with people, like I'll be real with people, like, do you find yourself to be attractive? Like, why is it so important that you receive acceptance for your herpes diagnosis from another person? Whereas, like, one, you may not even have accepted this part of yourself. And I've lately been telling people it's not as important that you accept your herpes diagnosis as it is that you accept yourself in its entirety, to where we reduce the need for accepting our herpes diagnosis. Because so more of it is like, all of those people looked at the relationship, they looked at the relationship to you, they looked at who you are as a person, and they went, this versus herpes. All right, yeah, screw herpes, like whatever.
Yeah.
This is more important to me.
I didn't think about it that way. Thank you for framing it that way. I think I thought of it as like them extending grace.
Oh,
you know,
shit!
which
Like feeling sorry for you, like, oh, poor thing. We'll still have sex with you.
I mean, I don't know so much pity as much as like, wow, they're really great people for accepting this. Which I do think like
It says so much more about you as a person
Yeah.
than it does them as people and your ability to select partners. Now we can look at this from any angle, but perspective wise, if we're looking at this from an internal perspective, how you are as a person, who you are as a person to them, again, like you've drawn in these people who like see that and like that. They like how you make them feel. They like themselves around you enough to want to stay around you despite what might come with sticking around after hanging around with you. So there's that.
Yes. And I think since then, disclosing to new partners obviously gets easier every time. And honestly, it's the same response. Thanks for telling me. Cool. Like it's really like it's I think getting over that like first time is like,
And also, I want to point this out. So, are all of your partners some form of queer, non-monogamous?
Yes.
Okay. So, I have to just make this acknowledgement that I have found that there is much more acceptance within queer communities, non-monogamous spaces as well than there is in the heterosexual vanilla world and the monogamous world. And this is not to say that any is better than the other. I'm not saying everybody with herpes should be non-monogamous and queer. What I'm saying is that this is a space where generally more vulnerable connections and conversations are occurring to where we're talking about our identities. We're talking about how people see us. We're expressing ourselves, in an alternative or out of the norm way. And when people can just be real and expressive about themselves, like that, if you're attracted to that, you're attracted to that. And it prioritizes not this idea of being clean or pure. It's vulnerability is messy and it's sometimes gross and it's ugly. Who can you be the ugliest version of yourself around, the rawest version of yourself around without having to wear that like mask of perfection? That's so prevalent in queer spaces, and I'm a straight man and like find myself like in queer community. I date queer women, and this has been like, oh, it's cool that y'all do things the way y'all do. Like, I wish I could like indulge in that, but my way of doing things, I see the queer consistencies, I would say, versus more of the non-queer consistencies where there is like this discomfort with rawness, vulnerability, and emotional expression, and even just talking about sex and being like, yeah, I do have sex, and it's like shut down. Oh, whoa, why are you talking about sex?
Yeah.
Why are we not in a relationship having sex? Like, the things that might happen in queer spaces are happening more consciously than in heterosexual monogamous places where it's happening more under the radar unconsciously. And I'm not saying this like any one thing is bad, but I know like my communication style with queer women is completely different than it is with like monogamous heterosexual women. Just from, oh, how do you like to be touched? How do you like to have sex? And it's like, why are you asking me these questions? Whereas in the queer community, it's like, thank you for asking me these questions.
Yes.
So I wanted to just make note of that, and that where you find like there's this connectedness of vulnerability, because when we do offer a disclosure, we're extending an invitation for vulnerability. Generally in your more monogamous or vanilla spaces that you might be in order to survive this vanilla dating world that we're in, you have to have a level of avoidance. And when someone extends an invitation for you to be vulnerable, that makes them now have to think, what happens if I get herpes? What does my future look like? How do I, and even getting to that point is so anxiety inducing because they haven't had to think about that before.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been, yeah, we're playing this game, we're dating, we're not really talking about things, we're bouncing around doing what we do. And then you might be the first person who sparks that thought in them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sucks that that's often what it is, and then people experience rejection because of that. But we got to look at it as not being about the herpes, but more so it being about the person's emotional understanding, awareness, availability, and willingness to go there and to have those thoughts and that discomfort within themselves. That's all.
I think that is, it's a perspective I didn't even consider, because I feel like
I saw your eyes when I asked if all your partners were queer.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, I feel so entrenched in that world, and having to do this disclosure with multiple people, like, who the non-monogamous, I think, culture necessitates a level of vulnerability and knowing what you want and bringing that to the table, right? Like, those are the conversations that people are having. I think also there's not necessarily an end goal. The difference that I see between like heteronormative dating culture and non-monogamous culture is, I think you do have to present a level of perfection and cleanliness, cleanness, purity, because that end goal is probably marriage and kids, right? Like, not to be general, but that's probably it, right? I still see some expression of like the word clean in non-monogamous circles on non-monogamous dating apps. Like, I think people say like tested regularly and clean, and like that word kind of makes me feel not great.
Well, with funding, something positive for positive people could put more time into being in these spaces where people who don't have herpes will be exposed to an understanding of knowledge and information and language that will allow for them to show up as better allies and encourage people to disclose. Because when people see that, that makes them not want to disclose, and they'll still have sex with these people.
Yes. Yeah. I think that, like, I don't know, it's not going to be like one or the other, right? Not one community is not necessarily better than the other. It's just that one just happens to be a little bit more versed in vulnerability and a little more like needing to know exactly what you want so you can bring it to the table and you can have the conversation. And I've just happened to be very now practiced in disclosing this diagnosis, and being very upfront and real about what I want, right? Like, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know we're coming to the end of the podcast recording. I want to ask you, is there anything that you wanted to share that you didn't get a chance to share? Because honestly, I thought you had a much like longer story when you were like, I want to tell you my story.
Oh.
I was like, all right, we'll do a podcast. No. All right.
No, I think I'm pretty good at succinctly telling a story.
Well, that was very good, and I'm glad that we got as much as we did get out of this. I appreciate it. I have to ask this question because I think other people would want to know too. So, we matched a year ago prior to you having herpes. I do not know, because I play around with this a lot, whether I have herpes in my profile or not versus having what I do for work in my profile or not. Do you know if I had it in my profile when you matched the first time?
You didn't.
Okay.
You had.
Did we have a conversation about it when we matched the first time?
We didn't have a conversation about herpes. We had a conversation about your nonprofit and talking about sex education, and I think you mentioned the word consent, I think. But the word herpes did not come up the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that point of time comes, and then we're in communication. I don't know what happened. Why communication?
I think it was like still the pandemic, and I was like, not into actually meeting people.
Oh, so you was just on there wasting time.
Yeah, that's it. I was wasting your time.
All right. Thank you for telling me that. All right, because I have these thoughts about like being on the dating apps, and then having my status in my profile,
Mm-hmm.
drawing in people who also have it, and I wonder, are we only matching because we both have herpes and this
Mm-hmm.
is easy? Versus like, oh, what kind of response will I get if it's not in my profile and I have to like go through the process of disclosing? Because there's a confidence that comes too when it's in my profile
Mm-hmm.
and people like swipe on it.
Yeah.
But then there's this, oh, you must have it too, and you saw that, and
Mm-hmm.
we matched type thing.
Do you
But
have it in there now?
I do.
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
it in there now. And this is Feel.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, because I think this is the only one that I have now. I deleted the rest of them. I'm on
So did
Positive
I.
Singles, and I have like my herpes survey in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to put my herpes survey on Feel.
You should do it.
Yeah,
You should
I'm
do
gonna
it.
do it.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my priorities. Priorities are survey, conference, book, support groups. Ooh, I said 3 priorities and named 4.
What's the book?
Yeah, it's Something Positive for Positive People book.
Uh-huh.
I finished the first draft. I had to do some writing assignments from my editor, who is also Jenny. Shout out to Jenny. Website, editing, publishing, graphic design, whatever else you need. She redid the Something Positive logo, all that. It's okay. So the book is essentially like the podcast has 300 and roughly 30 podcast episodes,
Mm-hmm.
weekly interviews, episodes, recordings over the last almost 7 years. And that's a lot of information. That's a lot of content. I hope that with the book, it condenses what the most important things are, the things that people generally want to consume, because not everybody's a listener, not everybody's in a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So having a book of here's what herpes is from this professional, here is how we talk about it with this professional, here is, because everybody asks me, well, what did you do? So I put my own experience in there as well. And then like some of the more useful things that I found, and like some of the stuff that you were kind of like, I never thought about it that way, that's in there. So
Nice.
just some of these like perspective expanding thoughts. And I speak on some of the podcast interviews that I've done where sexual assault or child sexual assault
Mm-hmm.
was a thing, and that being as a result of a similar, I don't want to say symptoms not the right word here, but like I think that a lot of the issues that we have are related to youth not being given those communication skills
Mm-hmm.
that should be in sex education,
Mm-hmm.
that have nothing to do with sex.
Yeah.
Because when we think sex education, we're actually talking about intercourse education. When adults hear that,
Yes.
and they're like, you're not going to teach my kid how to have intercourse, is really what they're saying.
Yep.
But again, the whole sexuality thing is that we're talking about your gender. We're talking about how you experience attraction, how you may interact with people who you might not be sexually attracted to, right? Just platonic people. There's like a code of communicating with people and behaviors that are acceptable and unacceptable, and accountability, consequences, and repercussions that need to take place. So all of this is going into said book, along with some of the information from the surveys. Like we'll have some charts in there and like elaborate on it, of course. But yeah, that's what I intend for this book to be. I want for it to just be a useful resource to people who might not want to listen to 300 plus podcast episodes.
And why wouldn't you?
I know, right?
You're reminding me that I had formal sex education twice. So I went to private elementary school, had sex education in 5th grade, and then went to public middle school and had sex education again in 8th grade. None of, gender identity, consent, anything like that was not discussed in either scenario, in either arena. And I don't know many people who've taken sex education twice. It's not like I failed the first time. It's just like, I just had the opportunity to take it again. So I think that's really important, and I'm grateful for that work that you're doing. That's very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else, I can close us out. Any last remarks?
Just that I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. And I was skipping around episodes, and there was one that you were recording the intro at your kitchen table, and your oven timer was going off in the background. And I was like listening to it, and I said out loud, like, Courtney, your meatballs. Like, I was just like.
Do you know how long ago that was?
So long ago, because it was like episode 116 or something like that. It was quite a while.
I was in my apartment.
Oh, you remember those meatballs?
It was meatballs.
It was vegan meatballs.
Oh God, I had a vegan meatball phase. Yeah. Oh. I remember I was trying to not eat meat sometimes, and so I got these vegan meatballs, and I like tried different recipes with them, and had like marinara sauce or something. I was making vegan meatball subs and stuff, and yeah, I mean, the only thing about that is like the sodium in those were ridiculous. I look back now because my blood pressure has been high, and I never thought to look at sodium because my family was always like, watch your salt. So I don't add salt to shit. Yeah. And so over all of these years, I'm still eating frozen pizzas, frozen meatballs, and everything, and these things have extremely high amounts of sodium in there. So the same thing that's in salt, sodium, is also in these foods, and like now my blood pressure is more regulated because I look, and I had a food tracker app, y'all. And in the process of like watching what I eat, as in like plugging it in and meeting these calorie marks, I'm eating whatever I want, hitting the marks. I just found out about 2 weeks ago that it shows you the nutrition facts. One of the nutrition facts being the sodium in it. A lot of these meals, I've been having like 400% of the daily recommended value of sodium in it.
Are you drinking like 2 gallons of water a day?
I drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
Yes, and I also sweat a lot. So I think that might be the thing that saved my life, is how hard I work out and how much I drink water.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I would have made it. Because I was eating this wing place like every day. I'd get these. Like,
oh God, wings are so good.
I'm gonna go get something after we get finished here. I don't know what. I saw something called Bay's Chicken up the street.
Oh my God, I've seen that too.
I mean, you got somewhere to be. I don't. So.
Yeah, but wings are like an alone food for me.
No. This. I don't think it's just wings.
Oh, yes.
Like,
yeah.
Bougie ass chicken and waffles. I saw. Yeah. I need to be careful because tomorrow I'm going to get burn-ins and like Southern comfort food.
Where is
Miss Delta.
I love Miss Delta.
I love Miss Delta too.
We sit at the counter when we go, and we do a crossword puzzle.
Oh wow, y'all are. Oh wow. I'm just picturing like 6 of y'all at the bar at Miss Delta. Like,
oh, not all y'all. Just my husband and I. That's our thing.
Okay. All right, that concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Please like, rate, review, share, subscribe to this podcast. Something Positive for Positive People's website has everything on there that you will probably want to ask me about. If you were looking for support groups, you can find that on the events tab. If you're looking about the conference, that'll be on the events tab. If you need the data, that's on the data tab. If you want to take the survey tab. Please use the website. As you know, it is now, I didn't put money in it, and our guest today has acknowledged that the website is very user-friendly, and it's pretty, and it's expensive. That mug expensive. You can join Patreon, patreon.com/SPFPP, if you need to have a one-on-one conversation with me. I don't do the coaching thing and ask for money up front. I always ask at the end of the call that you consider making a donation. Some people do. Some people say they will and then don't. But hey, you know what? That's a part of the risk here, because some people will donate like $1,000. Some people will give nothing. So it all balances out, y'all. I appreciate y'all and thank y'all for being here. And take that survey if you haven't already. Till next time.